Hey, here I am. I'm live. Hello, troublemakers. I hope you're having a happy Friday. For any veterans out there, thank you for your service. It's Veterans Day today. I'm behind on my recaps. I'm hoping to do a live recap every day. So we're doing day 4 tomorrow, day 5 on Saturday, and day 6 on Sunday. That is the hope. So I'm going to Alt-Tab over to my notes and get this thing going. Hopefully rock and roll through this pretty quickly. So on day 4, we got the second half of Colin Strickland's testimony. But before I get into that, I want to say a couple of things about Moriah Wilson, the victim in this horrible tragedy. I found her Substack newsletter online sometime last week and read the few entries that she made before she was murdered. She was putting it out every single 2 weeks, regularly on schedule, and it's just lovely. She's a great writer. Her voice shines through. Her joy shines through. It made me very, very sad, and I would recommend anyone go read it because I think that it's important to humanize the victim in this crime. The other thing I will say, it's on Substack, and it's called Mail from Mo, ! The other thing I wanted to say is I encourage you to donate to the Moriah Wilson Foundation. That's the URL is Moriah Wilson Foundation. I believe. Let me quadruple check that. I can do this. Yes, MoriahWilsonFoundation.org. It looks like an amazing organization. So if you have feelings about this trial, this crime, and you just want to give to an organization that's going to help bring outdoor activities and other things to, I think it's kids and schools in Vermont, where Moriah Wilson is from, then donate. I did. At any rate, so let's just jump back in. Oh, wait, one more thing before I get back into it. I know I say I'm a lot. Sorry, this is how it's going to be over here. I'm not a professional YouTuber. I'm a baker and a cook. I don't talk. And when I do make baking and cooking videos, I edit out all of my ums. Last weekend, I went over to the parking lot of the office where we got that bystander video of Kaitlin Armstrong running away in her striped pants. I've kind of limited my exposure to media going into this trial. I think I've mentioned this before because I kind of want to take it all in more like a jury member would. So I didn't realize that video was taken in the parking lot of the shaky cam because my cat's on the table. Hey, Coco. I'm sure he'll make an appearance before this is done. I did not realize that was actually taken in the parking lot of the medical office where she started her run. We know she got almost a mile. So, and we know she shed her striped pants while she was running. So that's the very, very beginning of her escape attempt last month. So I sort of tried to extrapolate where she might have run. She really couldn't have gone south because that's I-35. She couldn't have gone west because she ran partially through a residential neighborhood. It was mentioned in the affidavit. So west is not residential. It's all businesses along I-35. But there's a little pocket neighborhood just to the east of that fence that she probably got over, or maybe she went north, but I think she probably went east. And then they got her back into custody. Thank goodness. All right. So moving on. Let's see. All right. So one of the first things we learned on Monday was that Kaitlin Armstrong did live in Austin for a period of time. I did not know that. And so when I was surprised to see her passport card amongst Caitlin's things, That was when I didn't know that she had been living in Austin. She's living in Austin. It makes more sense. Could have easily gotten scooped up together whenever they took a trip to Mexico, which I think they did more than once. She moved to New York State. I believe they said it was in early 2022 or late 2021. Let's see. Strickland said he never fired the guns that he bought. He knew that Kaitlin had fired at least one of the guns because she sent him a brief clip of her at the range, at the gun range. So we get to see that clip, and you get to see the back of her. I mean, is it her? Well, yes, it's her. You can see her long strawberry blonde hair in a braid, and she's got ear protection on, and she's, you know, practicing at the gun range. His demeanor was pretty similar to what it was like on Friday. Just downcast eyes. He did on Monday do a lot more of this, and I sit almost directly behind Kaitlin Armstrong, 2 or 3 rows back, 3 rows back, I think. And so I could tell that what he was doing was trying to not have to look at her. He kept his hand up like this a lot of the testimony that he gave on Monday. He did speak a little bit more, a little bit louder, a little bit more clearly. I don't know if they ever had to actually ask him to speak up when he testified on Monday. There was a lengthy discussion of what, how one would, this must be, sorry, I'm a little bit confused. My notes are not all that clear for me either, but this has to be when the defense was talking to him, because I remember it was the defense that asked him all kinds of questions. Wait, pause. No, it was the state. Oh, it doesn't really matter. Somebody asked him all kinds of questions about how you would move a bike. Would you grab it by the seat? Would you grab it by the bar? I don't know, bike parts, the bar that goes from the seat to the handlebars. Would you grab it by the handlebars? Because we're going to hear that Kaitlin Armstrong's DNA was found on the bicycle, on Mo's bicycle. So that's what they're getting at there. Okay, now we got to the blocked contacts on his phone. There were 4 contacts that were blocked on his phone that he did not remember blocking, and they were all women, and one of those was Moriah Wilson. He, once again, was referring to Kaitlin Armstrong as the defendant rather than Kaitlin or Kaitlin Armstrong. The state wants to put something into evidence. Oh, it's his texts. Okay. So the texts included, and so these will be, I'll tell you when these are direct quotes. Hey, just did something to my phone, checking to see if this message goes through. And that was Mo trying to text Colin. I guess somehow outside of texting, they communicated and realized that he was not receiving her texts. So they go back and forth. Oh, weird. Did you get that? I got it. And then he sent her a photo of an old truck that he bought and says, did you get that? And she says, yes. And he says, haha, yes, I did. And he says, isn't she lovely? On April 11th, she texts him and says, did you make it to San Jose? And he responds and says, V close. So this was when he was going on a long sort of training tour through California. And she was also training in California at that time. Also, she was based in the San Francisco area, living with a friend at the time. So now we're all the way up to the texts. We get very quickly to the texts leading up to the night that Mo Wilson was murdered. She asks him if he's back in Austin, says she's coming in town to hang out with Cash. He says he's out in Lockhart projecting, which means working, and then they make plans for the next day. She texts him and says, what you thinking? He was on a ride and didn't reply to her. He replied later. He says on the stand that or maybe he said in texts that he didn't get Mo's texts. And she says maybe her phone is having issues again. This is important because the defense jumped on top of that when they cross-examined him a little bit later. So put a pin in that he said he didn't get Mo's texts, and she says maybe her phone is having issues again. That's paraphrasing. I don't have an exact quote on that or what the text said. They decided to go swimming. She says swimming in a beverage, which, again, everything I read about her makes me think that she would be just a really cool person. Would be fun to hang out with. Everybody enjoyed her energy. 3:45, she texts him a photo of herself, and it was the point of view of the camera sort of looking up at her and the sky, and she's like, because it was hot, hot, hot. It was so hot in Austin. We had a horrible, well, I guess this was the previous summer, but summers in Austin get extraordinarily hot. So she was sweating it out there on her bike, doing a training ride, because she was in town for a race that was going to be in a couple of days. He says he's going to pick her up on his motorcycle. When he gets there, he says here, HEEERE at 5:43 p.m. And the Celebrite report shows that her number was in his phone under the name Christine Wall. I talk about how he's covering his face. Right. So then, and the state does a lot of hopping around. It is confusing. I'm just going to read it to you like I have it in my notes, the way that it played out in trial, because that way I'll get these lives out quicker, because people seem to want to hear, you know, what is happening in this trial since it's not being live streamed. So I'm just going to hop around the same way the state hops around. Maybe at some point I'll try to coalesce things into a timeline. I don't know. We'll see. But basically in late October of 2021, this is established by Colin Strickland. Kaitlin and Colin went on a trip to Arkansas to, I think, a race. On the way back from that race in Arkansas, they had a long talk and they broke up. They definitively broke up. It was definitely over. And so late October 28th, 2021, is when Moriah Wilson was in Austin, and she had her fling with Colin Strickland, and Kaitlin Armstrong was very unhappy about this. Something that I learned when I did a little bit of research last weekend. So there's something called the Driveway series. I think it's series here in Austin. And it's just these short little 1 mile, literally give or take 1 mile courses that around town that cyclists do for fun in the cycling community. They drink beer and they ride their bikes, which I think sounds funny and fun and hilarious. And then they get together at the Meteor Cafe. When I looked up, I don't have the details in front of me, but when I looked up the races that Kaitlin Armstrong had placed in, the only ones that came up were in 2021, and 2 or 3 of them were in the Driveway series in May of 2021. So by October of 2021, when she and Colin had broken up, that October 28th date, that's a Thursday. They're on Thursdays. The Driveway series races always seem to be on Thursdays. So that, I'm going to double check my math here, but I'm pretty sure I'm right. Yeah, October 28th was a Thursday. So more than likely, I think I even found that there was a Driveway series race on that day. And I can imagine that since Armstrong had placed a time or two, like 10th and 13th, and then there was a later one, that was in May, and then there was one in August that she did not finish, that she didn't want to probably be riding in a race that Mo Wilson was riding in, even just this casual fun lark of a race. That is just my guess. But to me, it lends more energy to this conflict that she had with Colin on the 28th. So 10/28/21 at 6:52 p.m. Kaitlin texts Colin, and this is a direct quote: "I know you know better than to show up at Meteor with that girl. And then after that, she texts, or maybe it's in the same texts, but she says, aside from that, enjoy your eve. And he replied with, and I directly quote, could you please be an adult? So there's a little back and forth between the two of them, some sarcastic messages about, well, I'm just trying to be respectful. Oh, yeah, well, this is really, really respectful of you. Paraphrasing at this point. At about 7:45, he says, look, Mo's going to the meteor. She just left to go there with her friends, but I'm not going. And then at 8:05, he says, did you call Mo? WTF? Question mark. That's at 8:05 p.m. At about 9:30, he says, look, can you talk? And he needs to know what's going on. And she says she can't talk. So that was the conflict in October of 2021. Boy, I will tell you guys, I am bound to misspeak. This is not my forte, doing this. My forte is baking bread and making delicious food. So if I say someone's name wrong, or if I get names mixed up, or if I get dates and times mixed up, I just want to apologize in advance. This ain't a true crime channel, friends. This is just a Baker Ladies channel who's going to the trial. All right. Now we're going to discuss the pistols. We see that they were purchased on December 6th, 2021. All right. We got the gun and the boxes of ammo and so on and so forth. And then we see the little short snippet and we hear the gunfire of her doing the shooting range thing. March 12th, 2022. This is another weird interaction between Kaitlin and Colin. At the beginning of the day, because he was going to do a race, she texts him. It was a race in Oklahoma. He went, she didn't go. Channeling love and toastiness, space, exclamation point, XX. Okay. So that's in the morning. The race didn't go well for Strickland. Later that night, he posted a video to Instagram of people crossing the finish line at the end of the race, at the end of the night, kind of a nighttime celebratory thing that he said was pretty traditional for people to do. It's a big group of people celebrating, this race and the end of this race. But at 11:30 p.m., presumably after seeing the video that he posted to Instagram, Kaitlin texted Colin, send my love to Pete and Mo. And he wrote back 25 minutes later, can you please stop? Okay, it's time for a cat break. We have a cat that's rummaging around in the pantry. I'll be right back. Hey, buddy. What are you doing? Come here. Come here. All right. There you go. Here we go. Come here. Come here. Let's give you some of this right here. Yum, yum, yum. Yum, yum, yum. There you go. Enjoy. Again, not a professional YouTuber, you guys. Okay. Back to the recap. On the stand, Strickland characterizes this interaction with Armstrong as she was being passive-aggressive. He, didn't appreciate this snarky little love to Pete and Mo. We've established that on May 11th, the day of the murder, Kaitlin called Colin and he didn't answer, and she texted him and he didn't reply. And then we're at this point in the trial, we're to the point where 8:36, he texts her, Armstrong, and says he dropped off flowers for Allison at her son's house up north and my phone died. That's a direct quote. Flowers is slang for marijuana, because the person it was a friend's mom who was having pain problems, as I seem to recall. At 8:43, he texts her and says, are you back home? We saw the GPS data on Friday at the end of the day. 8:43, she was definitely, and we've seen the security video already as well. She was definitely driving around the neighborhood at that point. And at 9:21, he says, "Are you eating? Question mark. I'm setting up bikes." So he said that she rolled up shortly after that, but I think it was more like 9:40. I think that's what we learned on Friday. I probably will coalesce all of this into some sort of timeline document just to help myself keep it straight. Now we're going to, now the state is asking him about the days after the murder. So on May 13th, they went for coffee. He suggested she get a phone at Walmart since both of their phones had been taken away. So on May 13th at 6:52 p.m., he texted her, "Did you get a phone? I activated my number." Or maybe he emailed her. He must have emailed her. I didn't note that in my notes. It has to have been email. How could he text her? Or maybe she ported her phone number. I don't know. Anyway, so the defense is up. This is the first time the defense has talked to Colin Strickland, so so the whole courtroom sort of perks up and starts paying very careful attention to what's going on. For some reason, the very first thing Cofer asked him was, "Who did I see you with this morning?" It was strange. Strickland says it was his attorneys and I directly quote, "a personal friend who has insisted on chaperoning me through the process." Maybe it was through this process. At any rate, I have no idea what the defense was getting at. Whatever it was, it didn't work because he didn't elicit any other responses. He did ask Colin Strickland who he talked to over the weekend, and Colin Strickland responded, and I quote, "I have no fucking idea." You know, the defense is implying that Colin Strickland did this murder. So I think it's completely understandable if he's a bit prickly on the stand with the defense. I would be, you know, they keep circling back around to implying that that's, it doesn't make any sense at all. He was not there. He did not do this, but it would still piss me off if it were me. Oh, this ring light looks weird in my glasses. Oh, look, a squirrel. Anyway, right. So, and he was really prickly with Cofer. Now, that being said, I'm going to go ahead and editorialize here too. It's not really editorialize, but give my opinion. Cofer, man, he just does not miss a beat. He didn't get flustered. He didn't get irritated. He didn't get bothered. Strickland pushed back a lot. And obviously he's going to expect that. He's a good attorney. He would just rephrase. If he really wanted to get an answer, he would try to rephrase in a way that would elicit an answer from Colin Strickland. And he even got in a couple of barbs. So, you know, yeah, her lawyers are doing a really good job, in my opinion. Right. So moving along, Fayetteville, Arkansas, January 2022. All three of them, Strickland, Wilson, and Armstrong, were at a race/event there. There were dinners. There were other events. They were all there at the same time. And Cofer says, "You didn't see Kaitlin upset at any of these events, did you?" And Strickland says he did not. But he says she was never upset at any actual events, but would be upset. Oh, excuse me. Strike that. He says she didn't get upset at any of the actual events, but she did get upset after a meeting that he went to regarding a real estate development that he didn't bring her to. She was pretty upset about that. He said he can't recall any specific incidents from the weekend indicating that she was jealous of Mo Wilson, that Armstrong was jealous of Wilson. I'm going to pause here to give my thoughts about, it's a weird time to pause and do this, but I'm going to, about the purpose of putting Colin Strickland on the stand. First of all, he was the last person to see Mo Wilson alive other than the person who murdered her. And so he establishes a very important timeline from that day. Secondly, it needs to be established that he didn't do it. So call him to the stand. And they did say, "Did you murder Moriah Wilson?" He said, "No, I did not." Just paraphrasing. Thirdly, though, and this is where things get a little problematic. The state is obviously, their theory of the case is that Kaitlin Armstrong murdered Moriah Wilson because she was jealous of her. She was jealous of her friendship with Kaitlin Armstrong's boyfriend, Colin Strickland. I think Strickland has done a really good job regarding helping the state establish a timeline. I think he's done a really good job of explaining that he deeply admired Moriah Wilson. But and all he can do is tell the truth, which I think he is doing. But his demeanor is so off-putting because he doesn't want to be there, and I don't blame him for not wanting to be there. But I think it was pretty mixed bag as far as establishing that Kaitlin Armstrong was extraordinarily jealous of Moriah Wilson. You know, like unhingedly jealous. Now, he's telling the truth. All he can do is tell the truth. So if that's what the truth is in his mind, then that's the appropriate thing to do. He had to be called to the stand, so that's how it came out. But and I'm just really, it's been so long because it was just all the way back on Monday, but I feel, and you know, it's going to be a long time for the jurors when they go to deliberate. Other witnesses have been able to establish, based on direct quotes that they remembered Kaitlin Armstrong saying, that they felt that she was very jealous. And maybe Strickland wouldn't even know. Maybe Armstrong would be more likely to express her anger about all of this to friends rather than Strickland himself, because he knew Strickland was friends with Moriah Wilson. But I just wanted to sort of make the point that this kind of three things that we're hoping to get from this, and one of them was a little weak. Let's see. Casey Boston, I love watching your coverage of this case. Thank you. Thank you for covering it with your local perspective and wonderful Baker touch. Well, thank you. It's been a very interesting procedure, and I've actually been fascinated by the whole thing. Hey, Katie. Okay. Back to trial recap. There was a really long discussion of where the keys were kept at his home for the vehicles that he owned. Apparently they were like in a bowl by his front door. Or you know what? I don't know if it was by his front door. I think it was actually on his kitchen table, which isn't by the front door from what I remember from the photos from his house. It was in a bowl. They were in a bowl. I don't know where. Maybe in the kitchen. I have no idea. But Kofor really wanted to talk about that, and also about all of his various vehicles. He had 10 to 20 vehicles at any given time, many of which were not functional. His mom would live with him for 6 months at a time, and she drove a white Honda Fit. Put a pin in that. That's something that's going to come up later with some outside of trial stuff that I want to talk to you guys about, which I think we'll get to today. Strickland himself drove a black SUV that was pretty similar to the one that Kaitlin was driving at the time that the murders occurred, but he got rid of it in 2020 because it had firing issues. So I have no idea why the defense brought that up. It also had a bike mount that was similar to the one on Caitlin's Jeep. I think that the defense is just trying to say that there's lots of black SUVs with bike mounts on them in Austin. Of course there are, but we have GPS data of Kaitlin Armstrong's Jeep going to the murder scene. So, okay, whatever. Why wouldn't he want to be there to seek justice for his friend? Because the defense is accusing him of committing the murder, and that's not a real pleasant thing to have to go through, you know, would be my assumption. I'm not trying to be sarcastic. I just, yeah, it's a real divisive conversation, the conversation about Colin Strickland, and I'm trying to keep it tempered, although we will also discuss his outside of court antics before I'm done today, and they definitely are problematic, unfortunately. I mean, directly outside the courthouse. He denies telling Kaitlin that she should sell her Jeep. They talked about the Apple devices and passwords and numeric codes, and I don't know. There's just a lot of noise going on here. And I think that's the part of the defensive strategy, is just to throw anything in the wall, see if it sticks, and also to make noise and confusion, you know, so that the jury maybe won't remember clearly. I'm not sure. I'm not a lawyer. Okay, so the blocking of Mo Wilson, the state implied that Strickland both A, would pretend that he didn't get a text when he really did, because earlier he had said that he told Mo he didn't get her text or something. But then he said, no, I mean, he sort of implied, no, I mean, I didn't get her text because I was busy on a ride. But the state pretty effectively, at least as far as that goes, put him on the hot seat as far as, you know, well, would you ever tell somebody you didn't get their text even when you said you did? And would you block people? And he's like, yeah, I block people all the time and stuff like that. They fell a little flat when Strickland pushed back a little and said, you know, like, well, you say you got her text and then you didn't get her text just over the course of their several-year relationship or several-year friendship. I guess maybe not several-year, 1 year. Anyway, as long as their friendship existed, there was blocking, not blocking, blocking, not blocking. And the state implied that that doesn't make sense. And Strickland pushed back there and said, I unblocked her, which, right. They were trying to be clever. It didn't work. He was like, dude, I just unblocked her and then I would get her text for a while and then she'd get blocked again. So that was the implication that I got from all of that. Yeah, when asked why he didn't tell police on May 12th that he had gone into his phone and unblocked Mo Wilson, he says, you got me. Or maybe it was, you got me. I don't remember. Sorry, not funny, but it's funny that I don't remember. So Colin Strickland kept a spreadsheet of blocked contacts, which I found kind of curious and interesting. There were 71 blocked phone numbers and 16 email addresses, but 90% of them had no name associated. It was just spam that he was blocking. On his spreadsheet of blocked contacts or blocked numbers. I don't keep a spreadsheet. I just block people and forget it. Right. So Kofor then peppered Strickland with, did you and Moriah Wilson exchange naked photos? Did you talk about sex? Did you share your heart? Did you share hearts via text messages? No, 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 no. Answer is no. He said, is it fair to say, this is a direct quote, is it fair to say that to an outsider, your messages were boring? And Strickland said, I can't speak to that. Okay, so then Kofor wants to, okay, so Kofor was right in this regard. May 11th, 9 o'clock in the morning, Mo to Colin, what you thinking as far as going swimming later in the day? Same day, 11 a.m., so 2 hours later, 11:13 a.m., Colin to Mo, I never heard from you, exclamation point. So, like I said, the defense kind of landed one on that. To what end? Nothing really, because so he said he didn't get her text, but he really did. Or maybe he didn't see it. I don't know. This was when her name was in his phone as an alias, obviously, the day that she was murdered. Right. He said, would you ever get messages from people and then act like you never received them? Now we're going back to the woman in Colorado who sent him a photo of herself wearing pants, a brassiere, and her hand up saying hello or something like that. I don't remember exactly what how Colin Strickland described it, or thumbs up or something. He did describe it. He's a quirky dude, and for some reason it was one of his quirks to me that he always called it a brassiere. haven't heard it called a brassiere in a really long time. Most people say bra. And to me, honestly, pants and a bra, I don't even know if I would characterize that as sexting. I saw lots of people wearing pants and just a bra at ACL last month, so go figure. I mean, flirty, sure, but anyway. Kofor asks whether sending a photo in a bra signals a type of attraction, and Strickland said, and I quote, how is this relevant? And there were a couple of little teeny laughs, but this is a good characterization of how he was the whole time. He pushed back constantly with the defense, and I'm not sure it ended up being effective because it just kind of made him look combative. And Kofor took this with aplomb and said, you know, I appreciate that response, And paraphrasing here, now is the time for us to ask questions, and you got to answer them. Again, he was smooth. They took a long pause, and during that time, he just fully covered his face in his hand. He just put his head completely down. And I wrote, Strickland quietly answers questions from the defense, but is not looking at Kofor. He's pivoted towards the state, slightly towards the jury, still looking down, his eyes almost closed. So it was just really weird. This guy's sitting there asking him questions, and he's answering, like this, and never ever looking up or anything. So it was just awkward. Because you're not expert witnesses, because that's a very specific legal term, but you're people who work in law enforcement, you're people who, honestly, have been prepped by the state. They will look at the state when they ask a question, and then they will pivot towards the jury and kind of smile and answer the question. And this is just so categorically different from that it was pretty intense in some ways. Okay, so Kofor, I'm going to page through this part. Kofor brought a stack of texts up to the witness stand and had Strickland page through them. They didn't show them on the screen, and they ended up, they all, I'm pretty sure, were from men, incidentally. Not that this matters, and it wasn't brought up in court that they were all men, but I noticed as they ran through 5 or 6 people, who is this person? Oh, that's a friend of mine. Oh, that's a guy I used to live with. Well, that's the guy that is the head chef at one of the local restaurants. Actually, that's the one that I'm not sure was a guy. Might have been a woman, but I think that one was a guy too. Turns out all of these people had been sent the code to Strickland's house to get in the door. Again, we're just getting at the idea that anybody could get in it to his house and get the guns, is where I think they're going with that. Not effective, in my opinion. Did not work. But that was one of the things they did. Sorry, I'm trying to get a point in my notes that is a little bit more cohesive, because again, there's a lot of wandering around. The defense asked him if he was popular in the field of cycling, and his response was, that's subjective. He's a smart man. He thinks on his feet very quickly. He can verbally spar with the best of them, Colin Strickland, from what I've seen. Cyclists often stayed at his home. People came by the house to buy or sell vehicles, et cetera, et cetera. Again, just talking about how many people went by his house, had access to his house, and therefore the guns, presumably. And he points out that Colin and Kaitlin were out of town the weekend before the murder, so I guess their house was, empty. So somebody could have snuck in and taken that gun. Now, there's a big discussion of the Cherrywood neighborhood, because Strickland calls the area where Kaitlin caches, where the murder occurred, the Cherrywood neighborhood. I think it's completely dumb. I don't think it works at all. Later, the defense is going to get back on it and say, well, and we'll even ask another witness who was a real estate agent, might somebody call that the Cherrywood neighborhood? They might. It's very loose over here in East Austin. Neighborhoods and trends change too. Sometimes the border of something will sort of, it's just not formal. It's formal within the books at the city property records, but as far as colloquially, even I did real estate for 7 years. Even among realtors, there's all kinds of fudging that goes on, especially if one neighborhood becomes hot and you're like 3 blocks over and you want to sell your house. Well, you'll say you're in that neighborhood in your description. There's no fast and hard rules, and it's completely understandable that both, I think apparently both Colin and Kaitlin called it the Cherrywood neighborhood. It's a non-issue, but much time was spent on this non-issue to me, and honestly, probably to the jury. It was just confusing. I don't think it worked. Right, he didn't take the call or the text from Kaitlin on the 11th. So here's a direct quote that a lot of people have discussed and reacted to various ways. I don't even think I'm going to give my reaction to it. I'm simply going to read it to you verbatim, which was, Cofer said, "You know Kaitlin very well, right?" Strickland said, "No, I don't." Cofer said, "As of May 11th, you thought you did, right?" And Strickland said, "Yes." So, though I got quotes around that in my notes. When I put quotes in my notes, usually that means I wrote down exactly what I heard. I'm a little bit of a stickler about that kind of stuff. Right. So this was probably a good land for the defense. I don't think it really matters, but it did work because a lot of people have talked about it outside of the trial. Cofer asked about the text from Colin to Kaitlin at 9:20. I quoted it earlier directly, something about, I don't remember. But anyway, something about bikes. It doesn't matter. He texted her at 9:20, and Cofer says that Strickland told Detective Spittler that Kaitlin rolled up shortly after he texted her and that she seemed completely normal. So I don't usually remember numbers very well, but I do believe it was 9:41 when she got back to Colin Strickland's house on the night of the murders. So shortly, 20 minutes, who knows? I think he was working on bikes. Time can get away from you when you're busy with a project. My apologies if I'm wrong about the working on bikes thing. I have a lot of stuff in my head. This has been a lot of data going into my head this week. And we only had court 3 of the 5 days of the week. At any rate, after talking to his lawyer after the murder, Colin Strickland decided to separate himself from Kaitlin Armstrong beginning Friday, May 13th. At the interview the day after the murder, it was Colin who asked Detective Spittler whether Mo Wilson's racing bike had been stolen. He gave a second interview with APD on May 17th. So now we're getting into the vandalism. I think he discussed, I don't know which interview he discussed the vandalism at, but I am going to read to y'all some of, so this part did not happen in court, okay? This is part of an affidavit. So I am stepping out of the courtroom and stepping into some of the documents now, and I'm just going to read this to you because I think it's interesting. Okay. So this must have been on the 17th because the page that I have starts with Strickland saying, the second interview on the 17th, he says, "After I talked to you Friday morning, when Kaitlin and I walked to the coffee shop, we walked outside." Spittler says, "The house." And he says, I'm sure they saw I have 3 motorcycles. 1 is in Lockhart. 2 are at my house. The big BMW weighs 6,000 pounds. It's a big fucker, heavy. Now, I think that 6,000 pounds must be a typo. It does have 6,000, but on the stand he said it was 600 pounds, and there's not a bicycle in the world that weighs 6,000 pounds. It was parked between my mom's little white Honda and Caitlin's Jeep in our driveway on a slope. We walked, Kaitlin and I walked, decided to walk to the coffee shop Friday morning. And after everything and my motor, I have $50,000 to $100,000 worth of bicycles in my house. Okay. I told her to put a pin in the fact that his mom drove a white Honda Fit. If it was at the house, I just wonder, was she there? I don't think she was there. I don't think she's living anymore. As a matter of fact, I think he lost her earlier this year, which is really tragic. I mean, obviously we all lose our parents someday, but he's not a very old guy. And I think that's very sad. I have sympathy for him. I have been through that. I don't know. I was just kind of It's just idle curiosity on my part as far as wondering if she was there. She must not have been. It would have been mentioned if she was. It's ADD as hell, you guys. Anyway, he says, and I have motorcycles. I have valuable whatever. Valuable is relative. This sums up Colin Strickland. He's a philosopher all the time, from what I have seen. And I don't know much about that guy at all. Transmissions, cars, whatever's parked. I've never had any property damage. Spittler says, yeah. He says, Friday morning, my motorcycle was on a kickstand leaning to the left. It was pushed all the way to the right. And I sent myself these photos all the way to the right. Sorry, the email, I have to find them. Onto, like, pushed over effectively. Spittler says, He says, big bike. It would take, I don't think most females could do this. Spittler says, yeah. Strickland says, just because of the weight. It has cases, you know. I have no idea what that means. Spittler says, maybe he means the boxes that were on it, the saddle bags or whatever you would call them on a motorcycle. It was pushed all the way over to the right side where there's no kickstand onto Kaitlin's car. Spittler says, okay. Strickland says, and it was literally leaning on her car, like would have fallen, except her car caught and the handlebar dented her car a little bit. Spittler says, yeah. Strickland says, so that was extremely bizarre. And Spittler says, yeah. Extremely bizarre, and that I've just never had any vandalism. There was no windows broken. There was no, like, damage beyond that. Somebody forcefully pushed it over. Strickland says, okay. Strickland says, and it would take, again, I'm a bike racer. I know how to balance the thing, but it's a heavy fucking bike. I took photos because it was really, Spittler says, okay, yeah. So it was leaning the other way and it was pushed. The wind cannot push this bike. Yeah. And it was, you know, it dented her front fender a little bit where the handlebar impacted it. This was the bike that I rode with Mo on. Okay. I didn't hear anything that night. I mean, I was awake for a lot of the night. Yeah. For just, you know, in shock in my head. Yeah. So there was that in my driveway. This is after the police had come to serve the warrant. You know, the handlebar contacted it. Okay. Somewhere and left a, scratch, dent, whatever. And additionally, this is the driveway's right here. This is the main road. This is dry stacked. I did it many years ago. This entire row of stones was flipped over. This entire row. Now, this could be neighborhood kids doing something weird in the middle of the night. I didn't hear it either. And these weren't just pulled. They were like, you can see the impact. Yeah. They were like flipped. Yeah. Like limestone doesn't, you know, no, yeah. It chips if it falls hard. And this entire row of stone, and at the very end, under this stone there, under this stone, and at the very end, under this stone, there were $2 bills. That's weird. That's very weird. There were two detectives. One says that's weird. The other one says that's very weird. Like that. Again, this happened in the middle of must have happened at night because it wasn't, do you want me to send you these photos? Would that be helpful? Spittler says, yeah, if you could. And I mean, you said anything. This is something. Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised. I'm surprised I didn't hear it. It wouldn't, I'm surprised I didn't hear it. It wouldn't be that loud. That's kind of, that doesn't make sense. And then he says, but it took that is fucking bizarre because that would take at least 3 to 5 minutes to do that. Yeah. And it's so arbitrary and such a weird fucking thing to do. And Spittler says, so, and you noticed this whenever you woke up? I'm sorry. Whenever you came outside? Strickland says, when I walked out at probably like 8:30, walked outside to go to the coffee shop, I suppose, at the end of the subdivision I'm in. Okay. Spittler says, and when was the last person that you know of was outside that would have seen like everything normal, stones not flipped over, motorcycle not tipped over? Strickland says, I came home after the surgery, after I went to my father's house, after We had been in the room all day. I assume his father had surgery. I went to my father's house, and I think I went home again. There was a little after dark on Thursday. So, and I parked, I'm sorry. It wasn't the Honda. It was this gold Mercedes that I just recently purchased that I drove here on Thursday. Okay. That was the same car that was in the driveway when you approached. Okay. That and the Jeep. This gold Mercedes and the Jeep were the two. Anyway, I pulled in the same spot, and everything was normal. Okay. That was Thursday night. This was after dark Thursday until Friday, say 7 or 8 a.m. because I was up at like 7. I would have heard anything weird. Spittler says, did Kaitlin ever go outside, like at any point, just to see if I can narrow it down? And Strickland says, no. Maybe the time frame of, no, she didn't. Okay, no neighbors or anything? So then yesterday, I have a neighbor at the house, like, if you follow that row of rocks, and then we're getting off the topic. So, he talks about his neighbor who had an incident a year and a half ago where a guy on crystal meth broke into his back patio and stole some of his stuff. So anyway, that was a long diversion. Yeah, ADD as hell. I got it bad, y'all. At any rate, that was the vandalism. Those are the vandalism interview notes, and I just find them very interesting because the defense is making a big old hairy deal about the vandalism stuff. Okay. I think what I'm going to do today is get to the end of Colin Strickland's testimony and then cut the stream and start back up with the rest of the day, maybe lump that in with the day 5 testimony because I got an EDM show that I want to go to tonight. Okay. Let's see. The Kofor again goes through a rapid series of questions. This was very effective, establishing that Armstrong and Strickland, they didn't push. Did you push each other? No. Did you yell at each other? No. Did you hit each other? No. No domestic violence in their relationship at all from either party. So then he says, well, then what do you mean when you said the relationship was tumultuous? And Strickland says, well, he meant it was tumultuous to him internally, to his feelings. Which was a good response. It worked. Okay. So Kaitlin Armstrong, Kofor starts to ask Colin Strickland, there was something about Caitlin's like way of dressing that you didn't like. And I'm like, where are we going? This is weird. And Strickland's kind of pushing back a little, kind of trying not necessarily trying to avoid the answer, just being prickly as usual. And like, I don't know, what are you talking about? Because he was being a little vague. He was going to try to get at something. And finally, Kofor just says, she wore fast fashion and you didn't like that, did you? And he says, no, he didn't. And he says, this made you wonder or feel concerned about whether you wanted to have a long-term relationship with her. And he said, Strickland said something about not liking to see things as disposable. Of the little that I have read outside of the being in trial, apparently Colin Strickland loves to rehab everything from, old clothing, vintage clothing to vintage trailers. He's a very rehab guy, rehabbing things and making old things new again, which actually I think is really cool. But Kofor said, I think that's more of a you problem. And it actually landed. It landed pretty well. It worked. Sometimes snarky sarcasm doesn't work. This one, I think, was effective partially because Colin Strickland's demeanor on this stand was so off-putting. Whatever. I mean, it's not going to get Kaitlin Armstrong found innocent, but it was an interesting little trial strategy thing that did work in that case. I don't think Colin Strickland gave a crap what Kofor was saying. And when Kofor says that's more of a you problem, I think he just ignored it. So Armstrong would ask Strickland to go to yoga with him, and he never did. He said he has no interest in yoga. Kofor points out that Strickland was 35 when he had the fling with Mo Wilson, and she was 25. And he said, and I directly quote, "Were you taking advantage of her youth? Were you taking advantage of her emotional state after a breakup? because she had also recently been through a breakup when they had their fling. I'm just going to use the word fling because it's the easiest way to refer to it. Quote, is it common for you to have sex with the women that you mentor? Strickland says, I don't know what you mean. No. The fling with Mo ended on November 10th. Wow, I wrote that, so that must be what I heard in trial, but reading it again right now, I did not realize that it lasted that long. Well, that's how the defense is establishing it anyway. Colin Strickland clarifies that he didn't get back together with Kaitlin Armstrong until sometime in December. He says about 4 weeks later. I've also heard 5 weeks later. Kofor asked Strickland about all kinds of trips that Kaitlin Armstrong has made, including an unplanned trip to Mexico. Well, I think that unplanned trip to Mexico happened the night after the October 28th thing where she was saying, you better not bring that girl to the Meteor. Honestly, if I was in a fairly long relationship with a guy and we broke up and it was really sad and horrible and I had the means and the ability to go down to Mexico, like maybe with her sister, I don't know, I'd do it. Makes sense to me. But what the defense is trying to get at is that Kaitlin Armstrong likes to travel to, interesting locations to do yoga. Okay, whatever. It's not going to work. She doesn't go there and get plastic surgery on her sister's passport. Some more direct quotes. You were in love with Kaitlin before this started? I was. Did you lie to protect Kaitlin? I don't believe so. Were you now I'm paraphrasing again. Were you dating other people when your relationship with Kaitlin started in October 2019? No. Was the relationship exclusive starting in October 19? I believe so. One of their breakups was in late February, early March of 2020. They got together a couple of weeks after COVID shutdown started in early 2020. Hello, kitty. Oh, there you go, buddy. Strickland doesn't recall if he was having sex with, sexting, hitting on, flirting with, dating other people while they were broken up. He just says he doesn't recall. His voice gets stronger when he explains that the first time they broke up, which would have been about 5 months after they started dating, March 2020, was because he didn't think they had enough in common to form a long-term relationship. Now we're moving to October 2021. So this is going to be when the fling happened. Kofor says, Kofor asked Colin Strickland to focus on that time. Can you do that? And Colin Strickland says, I would love to, sarcastically. Kofor just rolls on. This was when they were driving back from Bentonville, Arkansas. That was the breakup. This is where the breakup lasted 5 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks. Kofor wants to really get in on the fact that Colin Strickland in one of his interviews called that breakup a blip. Strickland was very effective in this case. Kofor was trying to imply that it wasn't a real breakup, that it was a blip, that when they broke up with each other, when Strickland broke up with Kaitlin Armstrong, whichever direction it went in, that it wasn't really the end. And Strickland was like, no, that's how I characterized it retrospectively, because we did get back together. But at the time, it was dunzo, over. I'm paraphrasing. He didn't say dunzo, but he was good. He pushed back. He was good on this. He really is firm about he and Kaitlin were not together when he had his fling with Mo Wilson, which, you know what? I think it's not okay. People who are saying that he was cheating at that time, among other things, to Moriah Wilson, because she certainly believed that he wasn't dating anybody. So I don't know that he was no longer dating Kaitlin. We have no reason to think that she participated in him cheating on Kaitlin. I hope you get my drift. I think it's really important. And it's been established in a court of law, for heaven's sakes. So they were broken up when he and Moriah Wilson had a couple of weeks together. I think they went to Marfa also during that time. Cofer wants to get at the fact that Colin Strickland told police on May 12th that he and Mo Wilson were not that close. And the direct quote here, Strickland says, "We had spent very little time together on planet Earth at that time." It's not funny, but like I said, the guy's a philosopher. He just has some very interesting language choices. Okay. Did you have this is paraphrasing again. Did you have constant strife with Kaitlin regarding Moriah Wilson? No, not constant, intermittent. Talking about changing her name in his phone. Did you do that on May 11th? And he says he doesn't remember when he changed her name. Now, he did delete his entire previous text thread with Mo on his phone at this time, which I thought was kind of interesting and something that the defense could kind of point at. But again, no one's going to think that Colin Strickland murdered Mo Wilson. It's just physically not possible. So whatever. Here's another little direct quote exchange that was interesting. Cofer said, "You don't like to have emotional conversations, do you?" And Strickland said, "Apparently not." On May 17th, back to paraphrasing, Colin Strickland thought of Kaitlin Armstrong as a kind, thoughtful, and caring person. On May 12th and May 17th, he told the police that she was not a particularly jealous person. Detective Spittler is the one who brought up the idea of Kaitlin being jealous. And I do believe that is true. I think it's in the transcripts that way. Amity Rockwell warned Mo Wilson not to get involved with Colin Strickland. Rockwell and Strickland had a physical, intimate relationship. Oh, they were dating before he met Kaitlin Armstrong, and Kaitlin never seemed jealous of Rockwell. This is a whole series of people that Strickland dated before he met Kaitlin, and they're pointing out that she was never jealous of them. But this also did not work because the whole point of Strickland's fling with Mo Wilson is that it was bookended by his relationship with Kaitlin Armstrong. No, she didn't come into a new relationship with him and be jealous of people that he had dated and broken up with before she even met him. Yeah, sure, they were able to spend time together, and it's just that didn't work for me. I don't think it worked for the jury either, because I don't think it worked at all. Of course, I'm not on the jury, so I don't know what those guys are thinking. But that was one that I was like, guys, you need to move on, because they kind of went at it for a while. Cofer also wants to just try to establish that the reason why he lied about hanging out with Mo Wilson is because he just didn't want to. He was trying to avoid confrontation or having an emotional conversation, not because Kaitlin was jealous, but because Strickland himself is just a guy who just doesn't want to fuss with this stuff. That was a little bit more effective. Cofer implies that on the October 28th thing where Kaitlin Armstrong called Mo Wilson when they were in their breakup period, that it was to try to find a bike helmet. That didn't work either. I don't think anybody bought that. There was a point where Colin Strickland asked Kaitlin Armstrong not to travel to races with him anymore because, according to Colin Strickland, Kaitlin required him to maintain her bicycle as well as his own, and it was too much work for him to do when he was racing at this elite level. It's too distracting. Let's see, October 2019. Boy, sometimes I think I say the wrong date as far as when the fling happened, because Kaitlin and Colin got together initially in October of 2019, but then the fling happened in October of 2022. So if I got that wrong during this video, I apologize. Between October 2019 and May 2022, in other words, for the entire duration of their relationship, did you have sex with any people other than Kaitlin Armstrong and Mo Wilson? And the answer was no. And then Cofer says, all of those, oh, but you flirted with other women and have many female friends. Yes. All of those women are perfectly fine today. Yes. Again, another thing that didn't land the way that I think the defense wanted it to, because that can go either way. You only had sex with 2 people. One of them's dead and one of them's on trial for murder. So logically, I don't know. Did not work for me. I'm not sure what he was trying to get at. Okay, I'm trying to rush through this because I have got to go get ready. Talk about the gun. You're the one. It was your idea to buy the guns. Yes. You encouraged Kaitlin to go and shoot the guns and train. I don't recall specifically. But I think yeah, well, that's what I wrote. So that must have been what he said, because that one's in quotes. He said, I don't recall about a lot of stuff. So then they go and get the guns. They go get the actual physical evidence, open it up, give the bag to make Colin Strickland put on some gloves. He tried to put on some black gloves. They didn't fit. I think they had to get him bigger gloves because he's a big guy. He's a tall guy. He's got big hands. I think, or maybe he has. Yeah, I think he has big hands. If you had to get a different pair of gloves, I think the black gloves didn't fit. Anyway, so they got him some kind of surgical gloves. He pulls the gun out, ask him what's in the bag. He says, it's a pistol. Yes, it's the pistol he bought. They pull out the other bag. They pull out the other pistols. They pull out the all the stuff that was in the gun boxes, the 2 guns, the magazines, maybe the ammo as well. I'm not sure. He tried to get Colin Strickland to load the gun, to deal with the gun locks, all of this other stuff. And first of all, Strickland looked really angry at this point to me. And also he couldn't do it. He's like, I don't know how these things work. I don't know how this cable lock for this gun works. He never shot the guns. This is another thing that didn't work. He looked like he had no idea how to really handle these things. And so this makes him look very innocent. So again, like I told you, this was a mixed bag. The defense did some effective things, but Colin Strickland definitely pushed back at really appropriate times. And I'll tell you, he certainly never seemed like he was being dishonest. And so that's also important. You want a witness on the stand to seem honest. He just seems very defeated. Okay. You know what? I'm gonna stop here, I think, because I really have to go. So I'll even have to break this into discussing well, no, I'll finish Colin Strickland's testimony. There's not much left. But I'm not going. We went to lunch break at this point, and I have some notes about what happened during the lunch break. I'll talk about that at the very end. So let's get through the rest of Colin Strickland's testimony. State is in redirect after lunch. They established that Kaitlin Armstrong arrived back home in the black Jeep. Good, that's important to remember. They established that the spreadsheet of blocked phone numbers and email addresses were mostly spam. They tried to clear up the confusion about why Colin Strickland didn't reply to Mo's text on the morning of May 11th. Yeah, that one was that made him seem a little dodgy, to be honest with you. But mostly, honestly, dodgy is not the right word, actually. When he didn't answer clearly, he just kind of seemed confused. And the state did a good job, I think. It might have been the defense, actually. Yeah, Cofer asked Colin Strickland if he had told him on a phone call with him that he had actively tried to forget the events that happened around May 11th. And Strickland said, yeah, I have tried to actively forget that. as would I if I were in his position. But that's another one that almost backfires, because when he says he can't recall things on the stand, it kind of explains why. Okay. Yeah, the state really picked through a lot of the defense's points when they had their redirect. They revisited the business about a lot of people having the code to Colin Strickland's house. The state said, well, did any of them know Mo Wilson? I don't think so, no. So that was good. Yeah, I mean, I talked about how Cofer handled how prickly Colin Strickland was really well, but I also want to say the state's doing an amazing job. They're doing such a good job. Not only are they circling back around every time they get redirect after the defense is up and picking off the most important points that maybe the defense got a little bit of headway in effectively. Their pacing is also fantastic. Leaving for last Friday, we were halfway through Colin Strickland's testimony, which was establishing the timeline and was really quite effective and left the jury the weekend to think it over. And then this time, when we left on Friday, we had just watched very chilling animation of a little line going through the city over to the scene of the crime. I'll get to that when I do that recap, but it was, boy, oh boy, I'm not the only person that found it very unsettling watching her GPS data get animated. That's going to be in the jury's mind while they have a 3-day weekend. Really, really good pacing by the state. Also, their questioning is also very even and steady. Now, this is their case. This is their half of the case. We're on the prosecution's half of the case. So, of course, their questioning should be even and steady because this is their witnesses that they're calling. But, yeah, they're great. All of them. Really good lawyers across the board. But I think right now is the more challenging part for the defense because they are having to question the state's witnesses. So I notice more when they are able to overcome that challenge. I feel extremely confident that the state, when they are needing to question the people that the defense calls, most of which will be expert witnesses, I shouldn't put it in quotes, that is a legal term, expert witnesses, that are going to say that tool mark evidence is junk science. Gun ballistics evidence is junk science. I'm sure the state is fully prepared for their cross-examination of those witnesses and will do a great job. Oh, well, I mean, the state is basically establishing that Kaitlin can't drive a 600-pound motorcycle. Okay, whatever. We know that wasn't Kaitlin on that motorcycle, but okay, that's fine. They're good. They can do that. Establish that if they want. Talking about how yeah, they tried to get into the defense. Okay, so the defense trying to say that the reason why Kaitlin Armstrong called Mo Wilson in that October 2022 phone call where she said you shouldn't bring that girl with the meteor was her looking for her helmet. They tried to get into that and it was an addiction, and I think it was sustained, and they couldn't kind of, the state wasn't able to walk that back, but they did at least get Strickland to say he didn't know what was discussed during the phone call, but that Mo Wilson found the phone call strange. So that was also effective. When revisiting why he had Mo Wilson in his phone as Christine Wall, this is a direct quote, "He felt the right to maintain a friendship with an ex-girlfriend of sorts without constant strife." An ex-girlfriend of sorts is kind of interesting language. Felt the right to maintain a friendship with an ex-girlfriend of sorts without constant strife. That's a good statement for the state. That's effective. Okay, so at this point, the state keeps walking up the interview transcripts. and he's got a pin together big sheaf of papers. There's highlighting all over it. I can see there's highlighting and sticky notes sticking out all different ways, which, you know, he's organized, he's ready to go. He's moving through this pretty quickly. So he flips to another page and says, look at this line, read it to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you about it. Flip, 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 flip. And he asks him questions and he answers. Look at this line, read it to yourself. These lines, read them to yourself, and then I'm going to ask you about them. He does this 4 or 5 times. Twice, Colin Strickland was like, first time he's like, can't you just put it up on the monitor? And the state says, no, we have our procedures that we have to follow, sorry. And then 3 or 4 times later of doing this again, he says something like, well, actually, I'll get to it in my notes, but it was, I was feeling Colin Strickland's pain here. But I also felt that he was being a little bit, a little petulant, being a little petulant, just like, come on, can't we just do this other way? This is hard. That's not what he said, but it was just something I noticed. So another direct quote I have after he reads what he said and then has to sort of reiterate it, speaking to the state. I told the police that I felt that, and he says a bunch of stuff that I put dots in because I didn't catch it, but then picks back up the sentence. I had the right to maintain some sort of friendship, no matter what any history of people with the same unique experience as cyclist has. That one fell flat. I didn't quote that very well. I don't know. It goes fast, you guys. Another quote. He says that he told police, and I quote, I mentioned that I felt she had looked in my phone in the past. That would often cause strife. And then a little bit later, in the past, it has been the source of fights. They talk about the value of Mo Wilson's bicycle. Strickland says it's an understated bike in appearance that the general public would not have known how valuable it was. They asked him what he felt when he learned that Kaitlin Armstrong's Jeep was at the scene. And my direct quote for that is, I believe I said, I don't know how to respond to that. And that is intense information. This is the point where he gets frustrated about having to read the transcript to himself and then say it out loud. State says we have ways we're required to do things. Another direct quote, I wanted to be able to connect with Moriah and maintain communication without triggering old wounds that the defendant was carrying. Again, he asks if they could project the transcript on this screen. And finally, the paraphrasing here, but the state says, we can't introduce this into evidence, so we can't project it on the screen. So that's why they do it that way. I don't know why they can't put it into evidence, but they can't. I'm sure there's a very clear legal reason. I'm not a lawyer. State asks Colin Strickland if he gave Kaitlin Armstrong Mo Wilson's phone number because she called her on the 28th of October in 2022. He says he did not. The state asks if Mo Wilson gave Kaitlin Armstrong her phone number. Strickland tries to say he doesn't know. State says yes or no. Strickland says no. I'm surprised there wasn't an objection to that. How would he know whether Mo Wilson had given Kaitlin Armstrong her phone number? But the defense didn't object, and it worked well. The state got a good one in there. Left people wondering how the heck Kaitlin Armstrong got Mo Wilson's phone number. Okay, phew, we're at the end of his testimony. He was not released from subpoena. I am 99.9% sure that the defense is going to call him back as a rebuttal witness. Okay, so look. This was Monday. On the Friday before, so every time Colin Strickland was moving through the area, outside the courthouse, inside the courthouse, etc., there would be many cameramen just videoing him. Nobody was shouting anything at him. Nobody was saying, Mr. Strickland, Mr. Strickland. It was silent. It was basically B-roll footage, if you know what I mean. Like maybe not B-roll. I'm also not a journalist. But when I've seen the footage, it has been played on the news with somebody talking over it saying, Colin Strickland testified in court today. They can't get video of him on the stand, so they get video of him walking through. But I have never heard anybody call out his name or anything like that. And they're not in his face. At one point on Friday, one of the cameramen was walking backwards and he tripped and fell and, you know, had to hold on to his big, heavy camera. And Strickland was backing up in front of Strickland, and Strickland was trying to get through and caught his foot on the guy's camera and stumbled a little bit. This is how it was reported to me by that cameraman. So that's what happened, and a lot of people were talking about it. I don't think it ever was put on the news. It was just, I mean, I felt bad for the cameraman because he fell over. He's like, nah, I'm all right. He, you know, there was some sort of barrier or something behind him, and he sort of, since he was walking backwards, he didn't see it, he fell down. One other time, I do not know whether it was Friday or Monday, when Strickland was exiting the courtroom, he gave a female camera person, a camera woman, a little shove. Just a little shove, but it was a shove. It might not have even been a little shove, actually. I don't know. I have to go look for it. It's on KXAN or KView. It's not their camera person because it's their perspective. They're watching him walk by, and you can see him shove this camera woman. During lunch on Monday, I was sitting in the hallway eating my little sandwich, and I watched him walk by. I wasn't videoing him. I'm not a journalist, just watching him. And same cameraman that had tripped on Friday, he took a hold of that guy's lens and he gave it a good shove down. And the guy was not in his face. As a matter of fact, he veered a little bit to go over and shove that guy's camera down. Didn't say a word right before. Now, so since I was there, I heard all about it. I went over like, you know, hey, what happened? Because everybody was like 4 or 5 people at the most that saw this happen. But 5 or 6 cameramen were all around. So it got caught on video. That one made the news. One of the cameramen that was further, like, let's say this is the hallway. The cameraman that was down that side of the hallway and had already been walked by, Strickland said to that guy, you guys are brave. And then maybe 45 seconds later at the other end of the hallway, he shoves the guy's camera down. And then at the end of the day, or at the end of his testimony on Monday, and this made the news, he's walking by the same cameraman whose camera he shoved down, the same cameraman who he tripped over, and he stomps on his foot, and the cameraman goes, ow! I don't know, man. I don't understand that. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think he should do that. I wish he wouldn't do that. I don't know the guy. I don't know why he's doing it. I think it's childish. People are saying, oh, now the defense can bring this up and talk in court about how he's such a violent person. I don't know that they can, actually. I don't know that they can. I don't know that they can't. I don't know that it matters for the trial. But he's not doing himself any favors acting like this. And I think I just think it's very childish. Sorry, I just do. I saw it happen. It was childish. Oh boy, barking dogs! Yay! All right, you guys. This is a message from the universe that I should wrap it up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer them, and hopefully I'll do. Oh my God, these are so long. Well, I guess an hour and a half isn't that bad, but I'll do the rest of day 4's testimony, and hopefully I'll day 5 tomorrow, and then Sunday I'll hopefully do day 6. Things are moving a little bit quicker. Obviously, the Strickland testimony takes a lot of time because I was typing furiously the whole time, and people are very interested in it. The expert testimony, I mean, I don't get that deep into that stuff. So, oh, well, you're welcome. Hive Mind Concussion. I like that username. I appreciate y'all coming in and hanging out in the chat. All like a dozen of you. But yeah, follow me on Twitter, aka x.com, and I'll continue to be in the courtroom. All right, you guys have a fantastic weekend. Oh, and veterans, again, thank you for your service. Bye.